Hi, this is Dr. Stephanie Crowder, and I want to welcome you to our third installment of our What is Theological Field Education here at Chicago Theological Seminary. The first installment we talked just in general about what's theological field education. The second installment we talked more about what do we mean by field placement, and so the 4 hours that primarily students do their second year. Well, in this third installment, I want to talk more specifically about CPE, or what is Clinical Pastoral Education, here at CTS. I am Stephanie Crowder, and again, just want to introduce myself. I am fairly new to the Chicago area and started July 1 as Director of Theological Field Education here at Chicago Theological Seminary. I'm ordained Baptist and Disciples of Christ. Been teaching for 14 years. Also have a background in faith and health. I was program director for an HIV AIDS program. Also did some work with the American Diabetes Association. I've written a manual on substance abuse and ways in which religious institutions can broach the subject of substance abuse. And so I share that with you because I think it's important that as we think about clinical pastoral education, it's important to see really the overlaps, if you will, as it relates to issues of faith and health, and how does the CPE experience in many ways sort of becomes an embodiment of the work that you'll do for either an intensive during the summer or an extended period that you'll engage in 400 hours of clinical pastoral education. And so hopefully I'll be here to sort of help you, to guide you through that process. But much of what you'll learn will come from your own experiences as you in many ways engage in the CPE experience. So what is CPE? What do we mean by CPE? It's clinical pastoral education. It's clinical in the sense that you are primarily in a healthcare setting. It could be a hospice area, a hospice center, or it could be in a hospital or a nursing home. So it's clinical in that regard, in that you are working with trained nurses and doctors and people and psychologists, perhaps even psychiatrists, but persons who are trained and have gone through a matriculation process in many ways. It's pastoral in the sense that you are there to sort of help people during their crisis moments. You're there sort of a sense of comfort, a guide. You are there to sort of help them through some expected things in life, and many of the things that life throws us that are unexpected. But your presence is there as one to sort of help to soothe matters, or to help make things better as people go through these urgent experiences in their lives. CPE is clinical, it's pastoral, but it's also education. It's a learning process where you are learning hands-on, really, what it is like to meet people at their most urgent, most critical, and sometimes their most painful needs in life. It's educational that you're learning from peers, you're learning from supervisors. It's educational in the sense that you're also learning about yourself. You're getting in touch with areas of your life that perhaps you hadn't even thought about in many, many years, or perhaps skills that you didn't even know that you had. So you're learning about yourself, you're learning about others, you're learning about what it means to serve and how it is that God is calling you to serve and to use your gifts and God's grace to serve in urgent and critical areas of life. What is CPE? It's ministry with people in crisis. Again, in healthcare settings, could be at street ministries or community agencies. The placements vary, and there are many options related to where you can actually engage in clinical pastoral education. As I stated earlier, it's interpersonal, where it's your understanding of group dynamics. You'll spend time talking with peers and talking with peers not only at your CPE side, but talking with peers here at Chicago Theological Seminary. It's intrapersonal, where you'll have some degree of self-discovery. You'll learn about yourself, your own awarenesses, your own experiences, things that may have happened to you or challenged you as a child, or maybe some experience that you've had an adult. You'll be amazed at sort of what comes to the surface or what resurfaces during a CPE experience. CPE is in many ways rooted and guided by the ACPE, or the Association for Clinical Pastoral Education. And we'll talk more later about this website, but a lot of kind of the nuts and bolts of the who and what and the ins and out of CPE is in many ways it's delineated on this particular website. And again, we'll spend time talking about that in just a few minutes, so stay with us. Many of you may want to know, well, what does CPE involve? Well, similar to your field placement that you do in a church or in a community-based organization, CPE also involves 400 hours of theological field education time. And so these 400 hours are divided into their clinical hours, so they're actual hours that you'll be spending with patients. You'll be spending doing this kind of pastoral work and clinical work in many regards. You'll spend some of the 400 hours in group time. And we talked about the interpersonal dynamic of CPE. And so you'll spend time talking with your peers and sort of processing things that you've seen or questions that you may have in a group setting. But these 400 hours will also include some individual supervision. And so you'll have a CPE supervisor who will be there to sort of guide you and to help answer questions, to sort of help you to process your feelings, process things that you are experiencing. So you have 400 hours where you are reflecting, where you're engaging in group activity, where you're also spending some one-on-one time with a certified or accredited CPE supervisor. In addition to the 400 hours of clinical work and group time and reflection, you also have some written work that will be very critical. There will be verbatims that you'll have to complete, clinical reflection, and evaluations, so self-evaluation, supervisor evaluations. Don't let the word evaluation scare you, but it's just a matter of your processing and writing down the things that you're experiencing. It's just a matter of having documentation, because the idea is that you'll have a CPE unit, and you'll be amazed at how many chaplaincy positions, either in hospitals or in the military, require CPE units. So this written work is just a matter of documentation, but it's also a matter of reflection and self-assessment, and to sort of help you to even process more what it is that you are experiencing. Yes, CPE does cost, and so there's a tuition fee that's involved in CPE as well, and we'll talk more about that. So stay tuned. Well, many people want to know, well, when can I do CPE? When's an optimal time? Well, we try to make that easy for you here. The first thing that's required is that you have to have a semester of courses under your belt, and that's usually about 4 courses. So if you're in the MDiv program, we require here at CTS that you complete at least 4 courses or a semester of courses before you begin to undertake CPE. And within those 4 courses, you are make sure that you have taken Introduction to Pastoral Care, or the online equivalent, of Introduction to Pastoral Theology. Some students in the MDiv program decide that they want to complete CPE as soon as they can, so they begin second semester of their first year. There's some students who decide, that they'll wait until after they've completed field education before they do CPE. It is totally up to you how you want to do that, but just make sure that you have a semester under your belt, and within those semester of courses that you have taken Intro to Pastoral Care or Intro to Pastoral Theology. So you have options as far as when you can take it within your MDiv matriculation, but then you have options as far as the format. Some students decide that they want to do CPE in the summer, and so they do this intensive kind of working, 9 to 5, if you will, every day in the summer to get their 400 hours in. But there's some students who decide that, they want to do CPE while they're also taking courses. And so they may engage in what we call an extended CPE. The important thing is that if you have some idea, is to think about also the application process. And so if it is your desire that you want to do CPE in the summer, then I recommend that you begin the application process in the November before that summer. If you're interested in doing CPE in the fall, then I think it's important that you begin, the application process in that January or February. This gives you time to complete what I think is an extensive application process, and also gives your prospective site the chance to look over your application and to also set up an interview, which is also a part of the process as well. And so when do you do it? Well, it depends. You have the option as far as your first year, or for some students they decide to do it in their third year, but you also have options as to whether it's full-time in the summer or kind of an extended approach to CPE. The question is, well, where can I do CPE? Well, you just can't do it anywhere. Sorry about that. But the Association for Clinical Pastoral Education, there's a website that lists those programs that are accredited, and so you only want to make sure that you apply to sites that are accredited by the ACPE website. And so you go to www.acpe.edu. That's really the best place to start. I have some options in my office, but the website has a more extensive listing of just various sites really throughout the United States. Again, the website is www.acpe.edu. That, again, is the Association of Clinical Pastoral Education. And it's kind of a very extensive site. So you go on and you just kind of look around, and they give you just kind of what they're doing and who they are, and you get some idea of just the sort of the nature and the focus, if you will, of the kind of governing organization for clinical pastoral education. So before you even, I think, begin to sort of start applying, take a moment or two just to sort of look around the website and to get to know kind of who this governing body is. And I think that'll give you some ins and outs as to this kind of approach to clinical pastoral education. As you're perusing the ACPE website, scroll down on the left and you'll see where it says directories. And in the directory section, it lists all of their accredited centers. And so anyone or any institution or center that's accredited, they have to pay a fee, and they have to go through a vetting process, if you will. And so CTS just sort of plugs our students into the website and says these are the accredited centers, and so sort of making it easy for you, because the ACPE has already done the work of determining which institutions are viable, which institutions will help really to prepare students for work, for ministry, for service under the guise of clinical pastoral education, which centers will offer CPE units that will be honored when you're looking for a job or going into the military. So go to the directories, and then you'll see a listing for all of the accredited centers, and you'll see that they're listed regionally. You'll see seminaries that are affiliated with ACPE and roles of denominations, which is very critical if you're talking about ordination. And so you want to make sure that if you're going through an ministerial ordination process, that what you're doing as it relates to CP is in conjunction and correlates with the requirements of your particular denomination. Not a whole lot to say here, but you'll again see that there are centers all across the U.S. And so what you want to do, just where you are, because the beauty of CTS now is that we have online MDiv. And so we have students who are in Wyoming, or who are in Wisconsin, who are in Nebraska, who are in Texas, students who are just everywhere. I don't think we have Wyoming, I think I misspoke. But we have students from across the U.S. And so what you want to do is to, click on where you are, and again, see what are the accredited centers. Again, so to make sure that you don't go someplace and then your unit is not viable, or it's not valid, or it can't be transferred to a particular institution. So take a moment to peruse what are the accredited centers in your area and begin the application from there. As you continue to scroll down, and once you leave directories and you look at the accredited centers, go back to the left side of the website, and under manuals and annual conference, you'll see membership fees and forms. And so the membership having to do with, again, those accredited centers and the fees of those accredited centers. But you want to pay close attention to the forms. This is where you get that pretty extensive CPE application, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. You'll note here, again, once you have gone to membership and fees and forms, and then you scroll and you go to forms, you'll see various forms here, and you want the CPE application. And notice it's in two different forms, a PDF form and in a Word DOC form. You know, before even filling it out, I perhaps would just maybe print it and save it in another document, just to give myself an opportunity to look over it, look over the form, look over the application, and just sort of read through it. So you just may want to spend some time just kind of looking at the questions, looking at how extensive the application is, and then saving it, and then being able to complete it in a form that's amenable to you and that's easier for you in case you have to, save and then come back to it. We'll talk in the next slide about what specifically are some of the questions that are asked in the CPE application. Depending on who you are, this could take a lot of time, and so it's pretty, I think, extensive, if not intense. And so there is I think a lot going on with the application essay. So again, my recommendation from the previous slide was to perhaps print it, save it to a workable document where you can sort of go back and forth and saving it and writing a little bit and saving it and writing a little bit. Because you're going to be spending 400 hours at some clinical site, they begin by asking you biographical questions, so things about your childhood and parenting, or your parents, your family background rather, and just some general information about who you are and where you are in this whole academic process. You'll see they'll ask you about your spiritual growth and development. Again, it's just clinical, but it's pastoral. So it's clinical pastoral education. And so your prospective CPE site wants to know about your religious growth, your spiritual growth and development, about your journey, if you will. And so spend some time thinking about that and reflecting on that. And I think now you can begin to see why it's important that anyone who does CPE, that you've had that intro to pastoral theology or that intro to pastoral care class, because hopefully you've addressed some of these issues in that course and in other courses from your first semester here at Chicago Theological Seminary. Application asks you, yes, about your biographical information, your spiritual growth and development, but it asks you about your sense of calling, your sense of vocation. What is God calling you to do? What is God calling you to be? How is God calling you to serve? Particularly, how is it that your own sense of vocation aligns with what it is that you desire to do within the CPE session? And so if you're going to spend 400 hours, working with people, getting to know yourself better in this hospice center or in this hospital center or this, sense of this night ministry, then how does all of this experience sort of align with your own sense of vocation and God's call on your life? You'll be asked to talk about, an incident where you've helped somebody or shared with someone, or perhaps come to, quote unquote, someone's rescue. Much of what will happen in CPE is unexpected. It's emergency, it's urgent, it's crisis. And so, what has been your experience with that? Does engaging in such activity or ministry or service, are you comfortable doing that, or is there some resilience or just some unease or dis-ease about that? And so be as honest and as open as possible as you're talking about your biographical background, your spiritual background, your vocation, and your own sense of where you've been in sort of crisis mode, or come to someone who's been in crisis mode. And then share what you think CPE is. Sometimes we go into CPE and we think one thing and it turns out to be something totally different. So definitely share as much as you as possibly can about what you think CPE is. This application, again, very extensive. It's going to take, I think, some hours to complete. But it's an important part of the whole application process, because what's critical is the idea of fit. You're going to spend 4 hours at some place, and you want to make sure that you are a good fit, that this place, the people, the environment is a good fit for you as far as your own sense of calling. And then the people who are reviewing these applications, they want to make sure that you are a good fit for well, so that it's a win-win situation. So don't hold back. It's important to be as forthcoming as you possibly can as you're completing this application process. What are the steps? Well, we go to the ACPE website and look at the various centers, the accredited centers that are in our hometown or in the place where we want to engage in CPE. So if you're an MDiv doing, completing an MDiv online, then yes, you look where you are. So if you're in Nebraska or Tennessee or Wisconsin, then yes, you look at accredited centers in your home state. You complete the formal application, which asks all kinds of questions about your identity and about your education, your academic background, and your spiritual background. But then the last process is the interview process, because again, we want to help you to ensure that it's a good match. It's 400 hours is a lot of time to spend, and it's just not working. And sometimes that could happen. And if you get into a situation, once you've completed the interview and you've started and things aren't working well, then that's why it's important, to contact your supervisor, to contact us here at Chicago Theological Seminary and let us know what's going on. But there's really kind of a tripartite process where you contact the site, you complete the formal application, and then there's an interview. And then hopefully they'll call you back and say, hey, we want to work with you and we want to journey with you as you matriculate through Chicago Theological Seminary. Here's kind of the big question. People always want to know, well, do I get paid for CPE? Yeah, you really don't get paid for CPE. I mean, you pay, but I guess you get paid in the sense that you come away with, 1 unit of CPE. And again, if you're thinking of hospital chaplaincy or, a hospice chaplaincy, many of the requirements are that, if you want to serve in the pastoral care or counseling area, that you have a unit of CPE. So you'll have that under your belt. But yeah, you could get credit as far as your academic work is concerned, and you get to choose. If you decide that you want credit for this CPE experience, well, you pay the registrar here at CTS, and CTS pays the tuition for that, and CTS pays the site. So if you decide that you want to get credit for CPE, well, you pay CTS tuition like you would pay tuition for any other class, and then CTS forwards the tuition to the ACPE site. And so yeah, there is a cost, there is a fee, if you will, because it is a course, it is a class in many ways. So if you're deciding that, yeah, well, I want credit for this, just let the registrar know. CPS then forwards the money to your particular ACPE accredited site. But you may decide, well, I don't want credit, and I want to save room for my credits for something else, or I really don't need any more credits, that, my MDiv is pretty complete, but I know I need the experience to graduate, so, I really don't want any credits. And so that's fine. Then you pay the CPE site yourself. But just make sure whichever decision, whichever path, whether it's the I do want credit or I don't want credit, that you let the registrar know what it is that you're going to do, so that we can make sure that we document that on your transcript, and that we can say, oh yes, this person has completed CPE and they've completed everything else, and so they're good to go. You can sort of check that off your box, if you will. The other thing that's important, that once you've completed your CPE unit, you have to give the registrar a copy of your certificate of completion. So that is confirmation from your site that you've completed all of the requirements, that you showed up like you were supposed to, you did everything they asked you to do, all of the self-assessments and all of the evaluations from the supervisor, that you've dotted all your I's and crossed all of your T's, that everything is indeed in order. So make sure that you give the registrar your certificate of completion, and then forward to me your final evaluation, because we need that as well to make sure that everything is in order and that we have documentation that you have completed this unit of CPE. So again, some options. You can do for credit or not for credit, but whether you do 0 hours or 1 credit hour, you still have to complete, you still have to send the registrar a copy of your certificate of completion, and you still have to return to the Director of Field Education a copy of your final evaluation. And so now we've covered a lot. What is CPE? What are you going to do? When can you do it? Where can you do it? How can I get accepted into a CPE program? We've talked about the application process. We've talked about, well, what does this mean as far as my transcript and as far as getting my degree here at Chicago Theological Seminary. But you say, well, I still have some more questions, and there's some things I still don't understand. And I need clarity about this. No problem. Please feel free to call me. I don't have a problem with you emailing me. If you want to stop by, I'd love to see you, if you're in the city. So yeah, let me know if you have any more questions, or if there's something that I said on the slide that just wasn't clear. Please feel free to contact me, or you need some assistance with your essays. Happy to help you in any way, just to get you to the next phase, and so that you can have this wonderful CPE experience. If there's some questions you have about, credit or, registration, that is out of my portfolio. And so you need to contact the registrar specifically about those matters. But if you have some questions just about, the CPE Center or the site itself, please don't hesitate to email or to call that particular site. If I can help to facilitate any kind of communication, please let me know if there's anything that I can do on my behalf. Again, don't think of this as just, something else to do to graduate, but it's a very invaluable experience where you learn so much about serving in ministry, and you learn so much about critical presence, what it means to be with people in moments of crisis. And I often find that, in being with people during their moments of crisis, we learn about ourselves, and we learn about who it is that God is calling us to be, and what it is that God is calling us to do. Again, if you have any questions, just let me know. I'm just here to help you to grow and to mature. It's my desire, my prayer, that this CPE experience will indeed help you to get to the next, to the next place in your own spiritual growth, to the next place in your own academic and educational status, that this experience will help you get to the next level as far as your own sense of vocation and who you are in God, and who you are in service to the world. Take care. And again, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. Bye-bye.